Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of, um, our fantasy blitz segment for the members of the Manning versus, or I'm sorry, yes, the Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League on ESPN.com. Brought to you by the host of the Gridiron Glory, also the co-commissioners of the Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League on ESPN.com. I am Commissioner Will Wickert. Alongside me here, Commissioner Tad Dorsey, and we're here to bring it to you live. Week 3 of our news segment here in the league, and boy, did we see some really good matchups. But let's dive into the standings a little bit here for our league. Looking to kick things off in the Jackson division, we got first picks leading with a great 2-1 record to get things going here. Dallas Bruno, and he is currently leading the Jackson division. Then you got a 3-way tie for New Era David, I'm on drugs on the fields, and no CMC. Interesting name there for Sam's team. And then in the Mahomes division, a little bit more of a competitive division on that end for say. What you like to see here in the league is that we're 3 weeks into the season and everybody has at least one win. Certainly a big shout out to the league members out there for competing hard, for playing hard. Tad and I in the offseason certainly came up with the great idea to implement a buy-in, obviously, creating a more of a quality competitive culture league. And we know it's certainly something that we want to build, going down the road. It's certainly some, over the years, Tad and I have, really put our heads together, with creating things and building things for this league. Even like bringing in new segments, these podcasts, creating a competitive culture. And also don't forget, to do the pigskin pick'em that I posted out. I will be giving the winner of that. That is not myself. I mean, I'm not eligible for that, but I do compete in it just to kind of see where everything's at. This is fun, But I will be giving the winner of that isn't myself a $20 prize that I will Venmo to them myself. So be sure to participate in that. I mean, we're really trying to evolve a lot of things, and have this be a constant evolving thing in what is the Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League. This was an idea that started, more than 10 years ago, and Tad and I are very proud to have it be what it's turned into. So, and you guys are a big part of that. So if you're watching this new segment, I, Commissioner Will Wickert, thank you from the bottom of my heart for each and every one of you for going out there and competing each and every week as fantasy football players. You guys are true, honest fans. I mean, I'm looking at these group of 8 men, and you guys are some honest, true, hardened competitors. And we love to play fantasy football, don't we? I mean, it's for the love of the game, for the passion of it. So we appreciate everything that everybody does out there. So thank you guys so much for everything and all the support. And we hope to have you guys be a part of what is the new now buy-in. The new buy-in extension of the league, something that we just rendered. So let's get into the matchups. We had some very exciting matchups in Tad, did you have any takes or thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, just great to see everything being competitive. Great to see commitment from the 8 that we have. It's a smaller league than it was in years past, and I think that only improves the competitiveness. We have great quality amongst our 8 members, and I can't wait to continue to compete and go through these matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it, right? You certainly look at everything that we've seen so far in even just 3 weeks, and some very exciting things that are transcending, I should say, and unfolding So let's get into the matchups. We got, I guess we'll go ahead and start off with Tad. What did you have posted as the game of the week?
I have not posted a game of the week yet. Oh wait, from last week. My bad. I believe I had Reese's Pieces matchup as the game of the week.
So yeah, let's get into that. Because that was a very exciting matchup. Now, wasn't it? We got Dallas Bruno versus Liam Bald. The two probably respective quote leaders in their divisions right now. Perhaps an early season preview of what may or may not be. I mean, these two could certainly very well meet again in the playoffs. So, looking at this matchup, Dallas, 315 fantasy points, led the league in the weekly total. If I'm not actually no, Viva La Porta Loca, Tad actually were the highest score of the week. But second place definitely goes to Dallas with 315 fantasy points, and then Liam Bald with 266. But let's get into this matchup to see how things unfolded and transcended throughout. You got Caleb Williams, who went out there, even in the loss, still put up a good, decent statistical showing with the 38 points. It's just a really, really tough going right now. I mean, and what you're really impressed the most is that, given the situation of the Miami receivers right now, not having a starting quarterback throwing to them, still putting up 315 points. That's extremely impressive due to probably the likes of, say, the Chiefs defense, even perhaps the likes of DK Metcalf, Jahmyr Gibbs even, and of course, Kyren Flippin Williams. And I want to go ahead and get your take on Kyren Flippin Williams.
Yeah, the difference
performance for Dallas.
The difference maker in the matchup, certainly. I mean, he was the best player, the highest scorer for first picks, a team that's built around Caleb Williams and investing in his improvement. But Kyren Williams is the one that carried the load today. We saw a lot of positives around Caleb Williams. That wasn't a perfect game, but he put up big statistics, and I think that's what First Picks is banking on as we continue to move forward, and especially with the keeper format of the league, it seems that First Picks would want to build their future around a guy like Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a guy like Caleb Williams, and I'm just, obviously not the best ideal start to his career, but nonetheless is going to be coming out here and just trying to do everything, that he can to develop himself as a rookie. But looking on the flip side for Liam Bald, 266 points. I mean, that's about how much I put up in my matchup, and I won. So a very tough. I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just a very tough break for Liam Bald there because, you feel like 9 times out of 10 he's probably 3-0 in this case. And so it's just tough that you kind of had the breakout performances by Kyren Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe the Chiefs defense, perhaps. I don't know.
And certainly with the Breeze's pieces.
Darnold, insane fantasy showing. And I want to go ahead and get your take on Sam Darnold's fantasy performance.
Yeah, I mean, you bring in Sam Darnold, Liam Bald does, and that's with Jordan Love being out, Justin Herbert being inconsistent and playing against Pittsburgh, a very tough defense, and now Herbert injured, so Sam Darnold's being thrust into a starting role for Breeze's Pieces, and it turns out that was one of their best players of the week, so definitely stepping up there. A lot of questions around Sam Darnold and what's going to happen with him throughout the season, but definitely a great start. So the best quarterback on his roster for this past week, I mean, Anthony Richardson, a very disappointing look with just the 2 points. I mean, he had a rough go against Chicago.
Yeah, a very rough go against Chicago. only the 2 points there. But I want to go ahead and get your take on Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, the best total overall in the matchup. Did everything he could. He's off to an elite start, and Brees's Pieces is going to need Saquon Barkley to continue to be the best player to stay atop the league, basically. Atop the division, at least.
A very exciting matchup that lived up to its hype. Yeah, I mean, really, both of these players did everything they could to win this game. It's just, one or two breakout performances is kind of what pushed Dallas over the edge in this one. So, yeah, 315 to 266, the final score. First picks over Reese's Pieces. Let's go ahead and dive into our next matchup. Viva La Porta Loca at Almond Drugs on the Fields. This is with Sam's team versus your team, Tad. And overall, looking at this matchup, I think, wow. I mean, Viva La Porta Loca went out there and put up probably the fantasy performance of a lifetime. I mean, one of the best all-time fantasy performances probably is one that's going to go down in our record books. We probably need to go back and start diving into some of the league history, though this being the buy-in era now, if you will. It's kind of, we can maybe start recording that a little bit differently. But nonetheless, 328 points. Absolutely insane. You look at guys like Josh Allen on this roster against a very wimpy Jaguars defense, to say the least. 70 points, easy enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure he had more than half of those points by halftime. So,
he was in the 60s by halftime. He was in the 60s.
A beautiful performance by Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Burrow, even despite that tough loss. Rashi Rice even went out there. The Jets defense, a very solid pickup, especially with their secondary. Though for Sam, probably the biggest letdown for him might have been CeeDee Lamb. Probably needed a bigger performance there. Maybe even Rashad White, perhaps. Kyler Murray, kind of a rough showing there against Detroit. You might have liked to have seen a little bit more out of TJ Edwards, his linebacker for the Bears. As a experienced player of the defensive player slot, I would definitely say there are far. I mean, this is an honest, no disrespect take. I mean, TJ Edwards he's a solid enough linebacker, but there are definitely a lot way more higher tier, as far as fantasy linebackers to maybe look into, perhaps. And I mean, it's fair because you probably thought the Bears defense was going to go out there and they did. They gave Anthony Richardson everything he could handle, but TJ Edwards, I guess, just didn't get enough involved in that.
It's been up and down for TJ Edwards. I mean, week 1 he had 40 fantasy points with his 15 tackles against Tennessee, so he certainly has potential to make good plays and stuff. But this week it didn't happen.
Right. And then obviously probably Jaden Daniels on the bench. I mean, but how could you have predicted that? Yeah, if you start Jaden Daniels, it's a whole different story, perhaps. But, just a tough showing for Amon Drugs on the Fields, Sam's team.
Yeah, and I mean, now you got the quarterback depth. I mean, Jaden Daniels is a guy you can fall back on. It's strong to have good quarterback depth with guys like Murray, Fields, and Jaden Daniels is evolving into one of the better quarterbacks early on. So perhaps moving forward, that's something he'll look at. But yeah, that's a solid showing from Viva La Porta. The two quarterbacks finally making their plays, stuff like that. So just a solid look.
And obviously, Sam and I had that trade last week, and he started Devin A-Chain this week, 17 points. I certainly do expect Devin A-Chain to go off, keep going off all season. But what might have helped me in my matchup when we get to that is, we'll get to that when we get to my matchup.
Yeah.
But yeah. Devin A-Chain doing some great things in that trade from for Sam's team. So congrats on the win. As the owner of this team, what, like, I don't know, what are you feeling? What are you feeling for your club?
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna need to keep getting the high level quarterback play from Allen and Burrow. We're gonna need our running backs to keep stepping up. I mean, Jonathan Taylor was drafted to be a top tier running back, and he's done so. Um, One thing that I'd like to see, I want to see Sam Laporta stay healthy. He was injured in the game, and it doesn't look to be too serious, but hopefully we can keep him healthy and get him more productive. That's my take on how things are going.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, definitely keep things up. Definitely keep some good things up there, and congrats on the win.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into our next matchup: the No Chub Club against New Era. Tough break for Evan Sturgeon. We're kind of saying the same thing with Liam Bald. I mean, David's team coming off of the championship, and he avoids the 0-3 start. And one thing, you really look out of this matchup for is high quarterback play between Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes. Probably that comeback. The comeback, it was crazy. I mean, yeah, while David Drews is a Baltimore Ravens fan, um, yes, he's probably happy that his Ravens won, but ultimately, fantasy-wise, he's probably glad that Dak was able to get an almost comeback against them. Mm-hmm. So, Derrick Henry, of course, obviously having a breakout showing. You also got Mark Andrews, surprisingly, got kind of a head scratcher there a little bit. Kirk Cousins. Yeah, Kirk Cousins, probably not like the flashiest performance, but a stingy Chiefs defense. Yeah, there's something else I want to say about that, but I'm holding back. Really bad. But yeah, and then you got Brian Robinson Jr., 16 points, a decent flex spot. Yeah, just he drafts Nick Chubb, again, and Nick Chubb's still out. So kind of the story that's been the storyline for Evan's franchise. Just a really tough break there for Evan, because I mean, you look at who he started and everything. You got like Brandon Ayuk, Garrett Wilson, Zach Charbonnet. I mean, Patty Mahomes. It's just tough because you just feel like really in this game, like David just outplayed Evan. And no disrespect to either one of them, but that's just kind of how it seemed to have transcended.
And I mean, I think for No Chub Club, you got to see more out of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you draft him to be your franchise quarterback, and he's been merely respectable this year, fantasy-wise. He has not put up the flashy stats that we've grown accustomed to. I mean, 28 week 1, 28 week 2, and 34 this week. That's nothing special. That's fairly average fantasy quarterback play. So you want to see a lot more out of your QB1 there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely you do. So just a very tough showing there for the No Chub Club. Best of luck to them for the rest of the season. It's going to be very tough. It's going to be very competitive.
Yeah.
And then you got JJ's Gritty Glory going up against No CMC. And No CMC avoids the 0-3 start. Trent undefeated going into this game. But surprisingly enough, though, the Vikings defense was cooking CJ Stroud all game long. Only 16 points, probably the most humbling, really, performance of CJ Stroud's NFL young career. And then T Higgins, it's just crazy. I mean, the -10 from the Raiders coach. really, I would say the man who saved the day for me, probably the one who really made the biggest difference, Brock Purdy out of Iowa State. And yeah, I would like to go ahead and get your take on Brock Purdy out of the University of Iowa State. And yes, I do specifically say it all exactly like that, as I purposely see the shirt you're wearing. So yeah, what's your take on Brock Purdy's 60 points? The quarterback out of Iowa State University, located in Ames, Iowa.
Yeah, yeah, he had a solid week. Tore up the Rams. And he still lost. I mean, he lost in his game personally. It's something that he's grown accustomed to, losing the last 2 weeks, losing rivalry games. That's what he does. He's done it since day one in college. But yeah, a solid fantasy game, 60 points. I mean, that trade paying dividends early on. Your quarterback there, he was the better quarterback in the matchup, the top scoring player overall. So he did what he had to do there and helped carry your team when you needed it the most.
I just love getting a rise out of watching you try to speak professionally about Brock Purdy. It's like getting me to speak professionally about Patrick. Yeah. But JJ's gritty glory still had a very flashy showing. You know, Lamar Jackson, 50 points. Ramondre Stevenson and the running backs for Trent here, kind of a disappointing show out.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you certainly could have seen him put Aaron Jones in the lineup for Ty Chandler, but I know Gritty Glory was concerned about the health status of Aaron Jones, so they didn't trust the usage. But in the end, Aaron Jones was healthy and put up a solid week. And also, you could have seen a guy like Aaron Rodgers in for Derek Carr, but you would have expected a better game out of Derek Carr. That was a very disappointing showing for his QB2 there. So a lot of things could have been made differently, but we'll just see how it goes moving forward. Still a solid team.
Fred Warner, a quiet showing this week. Fred Warner had a breakout game against your Vikes, but then like this week only the 6 fantasy points, which is interesting, you know, given the fact that this was an NFC West game.
Yeah, very surprising to see Fred Warner not as effective stats wise, and some of that could have been potentially was he injured or something?
What?
What was he injured or something? I want to see.
Healthy. I'm looking at
so maybe they're
healthy. So
I mean, I wanted to just see if there was an injury. It doesn't look like it. So yeah, that's a very surprising performance by Fred Warner. You'd expect more there.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? Yeah, Aaron Rodgers. You know, you mentioned that, and I just really want to go ahead and get your quick take on Aaron Rodgers and his fantasy performance, despite the fact that it was on the bench. Aaron Rodgers, the 4-time MVP. He's won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He used to play for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he's having a solid year. He's healthy again. It's good to see him healthy again. That's always nice to see. And it's obviously the Jets. It's big for the Jets, and it's big for Gritty Glory now. And we'll see what they do at the quarterback position moving forward between Derek Carr and Rodgers. But it gives him some great depth, and we'll see if he makes a move there and puts Rodgers in the lineup occasionally.
On the flip side, for no CMC, you know, obviously CJ Stroud, you probably couldn't have necessarily predicted that, right? That was necessarily going to happen like that. But boy, dude, it kind of like burn you with the breakout for fantasy performance from Broncos quarterback Bo Nix. And I really want to go ahead and really just get your take on Bo Nix. I mean, despite the fact that he was on the bench, what's your take on Bo Nix's fantasy performance in week 3?
Yeah, I mean, both of the bench quarterbacks for no CMC had solid showings. Daniel Jones with the 42, Bo Nix with the 36. But yeah, specifically on Bo Nix, I mean, it was the best performance of his young career early on, and We'll see a touchdown pass at some point. It'll come. He's not had a touchdown pass yet. He has some touchdown runs, but yeah, a solid start in week 3 and something to build off of certainly, and we'll see if he can continue to develop.
Absolutely. Well, and when you got a guy like Cortland Sutton to throw to, it helps. So yeah, that's week 3. Going into week 4 for next week. We got no CMC, no Chubb Club, First Pigs, Viva La Porta Loca, Almond Drugs, Reese's Pieces, New Era, JJ's Gritty Glory. Probably safe to say that the game of the week would be First Picks versus Viva La Porta Loca. Yeah, Dallas versus Tad would make sense. Big game coming up there next week. Anyways, this has been another episode of the Fantasy Blitz on the Gridiron Glory channel, brought to you by Will and Tad, the commissioners for the Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League on ESPN.com. Thank you guys all so much for your hard competitiveness and playing fantasy football. Stay tuned for more content next week.